Hello, this is Jay with webappHero.com. Today is Friday, November 9th, 2012, and I'm here to demonstrate a little piece of code that I wrote, which is a Wakanda Studio Extension. And I'm going to demonstrate what it does real quick. We just grab us a line here. Each one of these words is separated by a single space, and we've selected it with our mouse, and we're going to click on Line to Array. And it creates an array. And we'll do it again, just make sure, that wasn't a fluke. Good. And this time we're going to pay attention to the fact that after the array is created, the cursor is going to jump to the left. And that makes it really easy to do this. Assign our new array object into a reference, my array. Okay. One more thing that is kind of cool, after we convert our string to an array, we can just do the undo button, and the Studio's built-in functionality will let us just undo all of those previous changes. So that's pretty neat. That's it. I hope you guys enjoy this. It's not meant to be a really advanced tool or anything. You can only do one line at a time, and I hope you enjoy it. If you happen to be newer to programming, then you might want to stick around for a few minutes and we can go through the code and see how it works. So I invite you to do that right now. Actually, this file isn't very exciting. This is the manifest.json file, and this is just where we assign the name, basically line to array, of what we're going to do. And this action name is something that's referenced as part of the index.js file, which is where the cool stuff is. And the code you're looking at right here is actually the code that I wrote. There's some template code that comes with the extension template already. It's provided by Wakanda, and basically it's an export pattern for CommonJS. And so this exports object down here is common to all CommonJS modules. But I just want to focus really on the code that I wrote, because that's code I'm most familiar with. So if you want to write your own extension, it's really easy. Only takes a couple minutes to get started, and there's some great videos on the site to help you do it. Okay, so apple, orange, plum, pear. Line to array replaces a single selected line of unquoted strings separated by single spaces with, and here we really have it's a string. It's an opening square bracket with quotes around our terms separated by commas, a closing square bracket, and a semicolon. And of course it becomes an array once a JavaScript engine interprets it, and we can then assign it to a variable and all that sort of stuff. So the first thing that we do is we start using some of the Studio methods that are part of the Studio application programming interface for creating Studio extensions. And let's just go visit the website real quick so you can see how to find that. Okay, so what we would do is just go to the wakanda.org homepage, click on Doc, and that'll take us to the documentation page. And if we scroll down a little bit under the Design and Administration section, we can find the Wakanda Studio Extensions. That's where we want to go. That'll take us into basically the API, the section. There's several different APIs: the basic, the code editor, the extension, the GUI, preferences, solution, storage, studio, and web zone dialog. We really only needed basically the code editor. I think most everything we have is out of the code editor, and so we'll just go over it really quick. First thing it does, it uses this get selection info, and I need to kind of show you this one. It's probably the more complex one. Get selection info, what that does is it assumes that there's already a selection, and in our case there is. The user has to select the string, and so we have a selection already. Okay, and what the get selection info does is it creates a property with it creates an object with the following properties, and then we can look up those properties and which will return different types of information, either a Boolean true or false or a number. And so and these are pretty self-explanatory. First line index, last line index, but we'll talk about them real quick. So get selection info creates this object that has properties we want to look up, and we're just going to call that selection. So we're referring to an object in memory by the variable selection. And next, we want to just remember, where did we start? And so, again, we're going to go get the info from our selection object, look up its property, and look up the offset from start of text property. And that'll return a number that we refer to, a number value that we refer to with our variable original character position. Okay? And next up, we again are looking at our selection object that we stuffed into this variable, and we're looking, this is going to return the number of the first line index, the index number of the first line of our selection. That'll be held in the first line variable. The last line index does something similar. It's looking at the index number of the last line of our selection. And then next up, we want to make sure that if the user has multiple lines selected, that they're not going to mangle a whole bunch of stuff and call us up, angrily on the phone, blaming us on a night's work lost. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, if first line is exactly equal to the last line, then run the following code. Or else, return this error message, line to array execution rejected, because selection contains multiple lines. Okay, so let's just keep going here. Where are we at? All right, so if first line is exactly equal to last line, we're going to do the following. So you see how the code indents over by a couple of spaces? I prefer to do 2 spaces over, so that way if you get a whole bunch of code, you can still fit it on the same screen. That's a preference. A lot of people use 4. Here, we're going to get the selected text, and that does exactly what it sounds like. It goes to our selection, and it gets the text of the selection. So we know that value is going to be a string. That string value is going to be referred by variable text. And we're gonna look up text in our environment, and we're gonna create an array out of it using the built-in string method, split, and at every empty space we're going to cut the string into elements, and that will actually create our array called temp array. And next up, we're going to use the built-in property of arrays called length. This is something that array objects share a prototype object that has a property called length, and it's going to return the total number of indexes in the array, of elements in the array. Okay, and so we look up our object. It's going to tell us how long is it. Put that in a variable called length. And next, we create an empty string, and we call it string array. This could be a little bit confusing because strings are different than arrays. So let's explain it really quick. Just read the comment here. Reference a string value that will look like an array value to be built up and returned in place of the original selected text. So it's a string value. That's the type of value that it is, but it looks like an array, so that once it's interpreted by JavaScript, it can actually be turned into an array. And that'll be more clear here in a little bit. So we have this empty string right now. And next, we're going to get right down to business, and we're going to build our final string. And we basically start with left square bracket, space, and then a quote. And you notice because we're using double quotes in the actual string itself, we're going to surround it with single quotes. And that way, we don't have to have all these backslash characters everywhere, making it really hard to read. We're going to use the unary concatenate operator. So inside of strings, the plus is not mathematical, it's concatenation. And that'll join our strings together. And now here we're going to actually call a method, the join method, which is again part of the array object prototype. It's available on all arrays. And what it'll do is it'll take what's between these quotes, which is double quote, comma, space, double quote, and it will join our separate elements of the array together and placing in between each of them this string, which is again surrounded by our single quotes to avoid having to use too many backslash characters. And finally, we'll use the concatenate operator again to finish up the string with double quote, space, ending square bracket. And this time we do have to use a backspace character on our semicolon because semicolons are really important in JavaScript, obviously, and we don't want JavaScript to think that's the end of the line. So we escape the semicolon, and then we close up our little string right here. We close our little string with a single quote. So the heart of the string, to highlight that for you, it's right there, and then we finish up our line. So that's it. We've got our final string, and now we need to get this string back into, we've manipulated in memory, right? So our program's running in memory, and we've manipulated our string, and now we need to get it back down to like reality, right, where someone can see it. So we can refer to our string array. What is this? It's a string value. It's a string value, and we're going to use this as an argument to the insert text method, which is again part of the Studio API, and that's just exactly what it sounds. We're going to insert the text back to the current location, right? And so boom, we've got this text there. And finally, we just need to move our cursor to the beginning of the line, as we saw earlier, and we can refer to our original character position variable, which references a number, and we're going to feed that into, that's going to be the input of our setCaretPosition method, which is again one of the built-in methods in the Studio. And that's it. That's the heart of this thing. And so the rest of this code, you can get familiar with at a later time. As far as working with Wakanda Studio Extensions. But I just wanted to use this as a learning opportunity because I think it's cool when the person that writes the code has to explain it to everybody and say, this is what it does. This is what I was thinking when I wrote it. And we can kind of do this to, create a culture of passing on our learning to the next generation of programmers that are coming in. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful, and it's not a serious tool. Again, line to array, it's just something a little fun. If you find yourself, making a lot of arrays like I do in my test code and everything, then it'll just be something fun to work with. So with that, I'll just bid you farewell. Wish you a great day and happy coding. Bye-bye.